All right, we're good to go, and we'll get right into it. Here we go. Got a good group live, so we'll get some good feedback and questions. All right. Welcome into the Bite Me podcast, and never let it be said. Never let it be said that our guys, my guys, Captain Dean, Captain Scott, Captain Caleb, don't go the extra mile, literally, to make this podcast because I was just talking to Captain Scott before he got here, and he was polling at 2:35 this afternoon, and here we are, just right after 3:30. Scott, you get the gold star early on in this program, Scott. Polling at 2:35, a long ways from where you're sitting right now, but you made the podcast, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. As the crow flies, it's pretty good ways on the roads and bayous. It's a long, long ways.
The people need you. The people have to hear you. Captain Caleb has got road football game, so he won't be joining us today. But we got a lot to cover, man. Of course, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I will say it: Podbean, iTunes, Spotify. Those are the big three. Podbean because we host it there, so you can literally see every podcast, every word you can hear that we've ever spoken on this podcast for more than 4 years, pushing 5 years now. So appreciate you guys doing that. And of course, the Facebook group page is where everybody drops their questions and such. But we like I said, you join there, you leave your questions, we'll answer them. You can also join us live here on YouTube. And we have a bunch of people already online right now. But of course, we post this right afterwards. I edit it and post it, and we're good to go. So we're going to start right here because it got a lot of run. Man, that video I did of Captain Dean and my wife and myself, dude, it was something. I think it's got 400 and something views already. And we were just like going out there. For those who don't know, my wife, Jan, has spent the last couple of months, if not more, trying to catch a topwater, a redfish on a topwater. And lo and behold, we solicited the services of one Captain Dean Thomas. He couldn't sleep at night, but we got it done, and it was pretty damn exciting. It was so much fun. That video gets going off the chain. She's going viral, and she doesn't even do social media, Dean.
Dang.
It was pretty funny.
No, that was something. It was.
He was feeling it. I mean, I could see it on your face from the night before. And I know that look because I saw it in the mirror several times myself when we were trying to get it.
And I mean, I said it that day. I've said it many times. The ones you want the most are sometimes the hardest to come by.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, you want them all. You want everybody. But Jan has paid her dues. She tolerated you for months.
Well, more than that, but fishing, yes. With a topwater, yes. And she would say tolerated is putting it kindly.
But and I mean, it's hard to explain, man. You go to your spots, you do the best you can. The fish don't know or care who's on the other end of the pole. It's a little chunk of plastic out there bouncing around, and you just have to get it in front of the right one's face. Some happen quick and easy, some don't happen quick and easy. But yeah, give her credit for persistence, commitment to the goal, and thankfully she got me on the boat with her.
You were working.
I've been hurting my arm, patting myself on the back for the last 2
Well,
days.
I knew that was coming. The blow up that ended up with the fish, she's had that multiple times. And I got to give her credit for this because she called you Tom Brady and me Joe Montana. So she didn't want to shortchange my effort there, but no. Hey, Scott, Dean was like literally I don't know if you saw the video, like standing next to her. Now do this. Now do this. Now do that. And I'm just in the back of the boat, just casting it and laughing. But it led to a topic idea for me, and we got some topics from our listeners that we're going to get to, including one that I can't believe I'm even going to be saying this, but I will. But people call it the white whale. That one thing that you've just been after and after and after. And ultimately, you either got it or maybe you still haven't. I want to ask, I'm going to start with Scott here. What was or maybe it's still out there, Scott, or maybe there's two answers. What was your white whale of a fish? That one that you were just absolutely terrorized. You were just frustrated. You tried. You obviously you're a great fisherman, and you just tried and tried and tried and tried, kind of like Jan was. And either ultimately it paid off, or maybe there's another answer where ultimately it still hasn't paid off.
I got two. I guess.
All right.
Tarpon on the fly. I had so many failures. Lines broke, fish that ate and jumped and got off, blown cast, you name it, I did it. And it took me a long time, and I finally got it done. And that was a really cool feeling. Yeah, finally to hold that damn tarpon and go, I did it. The other is the one that is still out there is a permit on fly.
Oh, okay.
I spent almost 5 hours one day casting to one school of tailing permit and never got a bite. And during that week, I got to throw it probably, I don't know, 20, 30 different singles, doubles, little triples coming by. And there were several permit that had to get a green card because they left Belize. I mean, they're in Nicaragua or something now because they did not stick around. And, I scooped the shit out of a bunch of fish, but I still haven't sealed the deal.
Yeah.
Every time I go down to Belize or any place that there's permit, I can catch bonefish all day long. I mean, bonefish, I get a lot of people telling me, man, bonefish are hard. I don't have any problem with bonefish. That permit, man, that
what is it? They're just finicky?
They're finicky, and they got this big-ass eye. And they will come up there, and they'll look at your fly, and they'll look at it. They come swimming up to it real hard, and then they stop like 3 inches from your fly. And then they study it. And if one hair is out of place, they go, no, I ain't going to eat that.
That's not right. Something's not right about this.
And if you wiggle it wrong, Dean always says you got to wiggle your worm right. You wiggle that thing just too much, not enough. I don't know. And then
you're still trying to find out.
They will spin around in a circle, and you can't see the wake when it stops. I mean, they are so far away from you. They're a pain in the ass. And I had a buddy that told me he's caught a bunch of them. And he's like, there's a secret to catching permit. I said, what's that? I need to know it. And he goes, you got to not care if you catch a permit. If you care too much, you'll never do it.
Yeah.
I care too much.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
Dean, what's your white whale of a fish?
Permit story though, and like Scott, his stories of frustration, and then you hear stories of other people that showed up, casted the first time out there. Permit came from 10 yards away and just destroyed.
Yeah, the lodge I was at, there was a doctor there who didn't know which end of the fly rod to hold. I mean, he was brand new to it. Got out on the dock and we're playing around out there. And I mean, he couldn't cast out of his damn shadow. He catches a tarpon, a permit, and a bonefish on his very first freaking day.
How about that? He's good.
Yeah. That's just kind of the crazy way this game plays itself out sometime.
And I like these stories from you guys because you've been, obviously doing it forever and all over the place. Dean, was there a fish that it took you forever to finally catch? And is there still one out there for you that you still haven't?
Well, the one that took forever that we talked about a couple of weeks ago was that giant trout on the fly. I mean, that's a giant trout on the fly is probably equal to the permit on the fly. Because if you're going to sight cast to them, if you're going to see them, when you see that fish, it's probably already seen you. And then making the cast, getting it to eat, not spooking it. Yeah. And I mean, that kind of goes with fly fishing for any fish, really, man. All those things have to happen together. But of course, sight casting the big trout on shallow water, It's nerve wracking, and seen a lot of them, watched a lot of them swim away from me. And I mean, I don't know what, if there, I don't even know what I would pick for the next one.
The
I
one that
would
you
love,
haven't, that you
yeah.
love to catch. Mine is
Well,
embarrassing.
I mean, that would be somewhere down Costa Rica style, just commandeer the whole boat and have them tease fish to the back of the boat and then fly rod for big game,
Yeah.
shellfish, tuna, and things like that. But that's another one, you go out there, that you're gonna have to have the whole boat to yourself that day, and it's going to be a complete effort by the crew, the angler, and that would be amazing to
Mine
actually tease something like that and then chunk a fly in there.
Yeah, mine is embarrassing. The one that took me forever, as in more than 4 decades, was a 30-inch trout. I just wanted to catch a 30-inch trout, just always did, and I caught innumerable. I can't even tell you how many 28s and 29s that I thought were it, and then never did. But I finally did, probably 3 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago now. But the one I'm embarrassed about, and I don't even want to say it out loud because I'm sure everybody listening has probably caught one. Believe it or not, all the fish, all the I'm pretty good at that. All the fish I've caught, the billfish and I've been down, traveled all through, Caribbean and Australia. I caught some Australian fish and all that. Believe it or not, I've never caught a tuna. Not one. When we were in Costa Rica, Dean, and those tuna, they were coming right next to the boat. And I was like, I'll be damn. I'm going to catch a tuna today.
They damn near jumped in the boat.
Nope. Didn't catch one. Didn't catch a single one.
Yeah.
I've got
guys. That was quite frustrating.
Yeah. And I've got guys, you got to come down to Venice. I've been offshore in Texas. I've been offshore in Louisiana, maybe not Venice, but in Louisiana, and just never caught a tuna. And you would think that's easy as much as I fish.
Did you go to Tarpon?
I've not caught a tarpon. Oh, by the way, I was channeling you, Scott. But I've never really targeted tarpon that much. It's not my white whale. I want to catch a tuna, but I would have a blast catching a tarpon. So we were on the jetties. I took Jan and my middle son BG out the day before Dean hopped on the boat, and we were just trying to catch whatever. And we were, catching a couple of trout here and there. I caught a red. BG caught a red. Jan did not. She had several blowups. It was the day before Dean got her on that redfish. And so I said, let's go out to the jetty, see what's happening out there. And we were catching, Spanish Max and, I think a trout and other things. Scott, I kid you not, right in front of the boat, right next to the jetties, at least 3, maybe 4 schools of baby tarpon. Just, you could see them just coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Just whoop, you see the whole fish, pretty much the whole fish. And I was like, oh, that's a tarpon. I didn't have any tarpon, stuff, but I started throwing my biggest plastics and everything I could. And, but I'll be damned, man. And Dean was like, are you sure those were tarpon? I was like, they were tarpon. Trust me. It was probably, they weren't even 30 feet away.
Yeah. That's my everyday out there.
It's crazy.
I'll see hundreds of them in a day.
Mm-hmm. It was wild. Right next to the jetties, right next to the boat. And I just started throwing big old plastics. Whatever. You never know. You never know. But, So that's the white whale, and we're getting a lot of people here live talking about what their white whale fish is. But it was a happy ending to a great story, and I'm with Dean. I mean, her persistence was what really made me want her to catch one so bad. I mean, she would be out there 5-6 hours casting the top water. Nope, and then we'd throw some plastics to just get her on a fish or whatever, and then back to the top water. So persistence pays, baby.
Wasn't there one picture of you holding a redfish that was?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about that.
That was wrong, man.
I was on the back. I was practically sitting on the motor. I was way in the back of the boat.
Let's talk about John sitting on the back of the boat, casting to the front of the boat.
No, I wasn't.
Stealing.
I was I felt a little bit bad.
You used to have a deal on your radio show, the slime ball of the week.
Well, slime ball of the week.
You're qualified.
That
And
was
then
a
to take a
dagger.
picture
And
with it and standing next to her, man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, Dean did that. He's trying to mock me. Jay says I'm pot licking my own wife. No, I was in the back of the boat just casting.
and we even had, a vague conversation about, John, today your job is to sit back there and be quiet. And what's he do? And look, did you see the sun wasn't even over the horizon yet? Bam, here comes John with his
You wanted John to sit back and be quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I said it was a vague conversation, didn't I?
Real quick before we get to the next topic, Scott, we brought it up, and Harrison's asking what the best lure is to catch the smaller tarpon. Is it still the same, or you tell us?
Small lure.
You tell us.
DOA terrorized, medium size.
Mm-hmm.
That's my go-to on them.
On the smaller tarpon.
Yeah, and I've hung them on a lot of different stuff, but and I got guys next to me all the time. They're throwing live croaker at them and throwing shrimp at them. They'll catch pretty much about the same number I do. Every now and then they'll outdo me.
Mm-hmm.
But that little DOA terrorize is awesome. If you see a lot of little finger mullet, then you can bump up to the DOA and the bait buster.
Yeah.
Most of the time I'm throwing either a clear with holographic or the pearl with a green back.
Mm-hmm.
Throw that a lot. And then some days, like the other day, they wanted the root beer with sparkles in it for whatever reason. But usually I'll start off, if I got two guys, I'll have one throwing a real light colored one and one throwing a root beer or purple.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of depends on water clarity. The water was a little off the other day, so that darker color was working better. But day in, day out, the pearl with the green back really shines. If I've got super clear water, like seeing down 4 or 5 feet, that's when I go to the clear with the holographic in it.
Mm-hmm. There is one more postscript to the trip we took. So, Dean, I got home today, probably about an hour ago.
I thought you were going to apologize publicly.
No, I'm not going to apologize for that. I was sitting on the motor, man. But hey, it sucks for her. But she got hers ultimately. But
I thought you were sitting there feeling guilty, listening to the conversation.
No,
and
not at all.
Man, I really should just go and
not in the least bit.
Come clean and
I just I resent the fact that you said I was casting to the front. I was casting right in front of her. There is a postscript, and that is I got home today about an hour ago, and on my front porch were 2 pouches. I opened the pouches, 9 spook juniors. 9 spook juniors landed on my front porch today, baby.
Did she order them?
Yeah, Jan ordered 2 cases of lures.
She's done. It's over. That's a wrap. She's like, that's a wrap. It's over.
All right, so go ahead. Well, she don't have 3 favorite lures anymore. She's got 3 favorite: a bone, a redheaded, and a chartreuse spook.
We got 3 of each. We got 3 of each of those landed on my front porch. The bone, 3 redheaded strangers, and 3 with the chartreuse head. Like, boom, just like that.
We all know
the redheaded stepchild.
We all know about trash talking on the boat, and Dean's really good at it. But I had a little 13-year-old boy on the boat the other day that nailed it. I mean, his dad's a veterinarian surgeon, and he's had him out with me a couple times now. Good kid. Yeah, we've had a great time. And he gets out there and he chunks lures. He'll throw lures all day. And right off the bat, man, he had 2 good reds. Landed both of them. His dad's sitting on 0. And then he ends up catching a little dink trout. His dad catches a little dink trout, and his dad's up there just humming lures. Kid sits back, gets something to drink, kicking back. His dad says, "You done fishing? What? Taking a break?" He's, "I'll just take a break, let you catch up."
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, the trash talking was good, and it was.
So you want? I had another classic one this week. I had the dad and 2 daughters on the boat, and so Dad caught this beautiful redfish, and we had him like in the sunrise, posing him up. took this beautiful photo, and the daughter looks over and said, "We're going to put that one on your funeral reel."
His own daughter.
Well, this kid is sitting there. Well, dad gets a big old wind knot in his spinner, and he's got mono on there, and it did one of those poof, spin. And so his dad's like, man, I got to cut this one out. So I pulled over to the side, got something to drink. Little boy's still getting something to drink. He's just kicking back on the cooler, and dad cuts that out. We restring him, get his lure tied back on. He's got a big wad of line in his hand now. He turns around, hands it to his son, says, "Here, take care of that." And the boy grabs it and he looks at it and he says, "What do I do with it?" He said, "Well, don't throw it in the water or anything, because animals get it and it'll get tangled up, birds." And he's like, "Oh, okay." He says, "Yeah, I've had to do surgery on cats and dogs that got a hold of that, that line. It gets around their tongue and it wraps up and they swallow part of it." He said, "I've had to do some pretty serious surgeries on them." And the kid's listening. He said, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I wonder why they would eat that. I wonder what it tastes like." And his dad goes, I don't know, plastic and salt. Maybe plastic. And the boy starts putting it in his mouth. And he's running his tongue on this line. He's messing with it. And he goes, "Huh, you're right. Tastes like plastic. Tastes like salt. You're right." And his dad turns around, looks at it, and says, "What the hell are you doing?" He says, "I don't know." He said, "But you know what it doesn't taste like?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "Red fish."
That's so good. Yeah.
I mean, destroyed his dad with that one. It was a clean kill shot. I mean,
man, he was setting it up too. It's all about the setup.
Oh, it was the setup. He long played that one the whole way.
It doesn't taste like redfish.
That's a cool kid.
Yeah, but I still can't believe those two girls, because we're not far from you at one point, and they were chattering and chattering like, "Yeah, we're gonna put that on your funeral reel." Well, man, I'm standing right here.
It's a cold-blooded, man. It was. There were others from that day that they just never quit. It was hilarious, but that one stuck with me. That was a good one.
Yeah. All right, so I sent you guys this link, and like I said, I don't even know if I should say this, because just as soon as you do, people are going to maybe jump to the wrong conclusions. But the question is about, are we kind of pointed toward, I'm not going to say we're there, but pointed toward maybe a return to some pretty healthy habitat and the fishery? Because I sent you the thing about, I guess I forget exactly what, Pelagius, Marine Agriculture Research, was talking about the largest marine species restoration project ever, and it's 15 billion oysters along the Texas coast by 2025. On top of that, it was the day we were fishing or Dean was fishing with us. We're back in some of these back lakes or some of these shallows, and I was like, man, the mangroves are just getting abundant again. And Dean was talking about how they're really making a big time return. So you got no big hurricane either. I mean, yes, people, around Texas, the Gulf Coast, outside of Florida, of course, had some hurricanes, but nothing that would really necessarily, Scott, I'm gonna start with you, like completely restructure things. We got mangroves coming back. We got 15 billion oysters perhaps by 2025 planted. I mean, are we, dare I say, are we getting to a good spot here in terms at least of promise?
I mean, I think we can get back there. We got a long ways to go to get back to what I call the glory days, and everybody's got a different level of glory days. I mean, if a guy started fishing 10, 12 years ago, he thinks that was awesome, and it's downgraded since then. So I think hopefully we've hit the bottom, and now we're trending back up, because there's a lot more thought towards conservation all across the board. I mean, I take guys out all the time and say, man, I used to keep every keeper record that I put in the boat. Now I got no problem at all releasing every fish that I catch. And like we say on here, I don't care. You can fish with me, you can keep fish, whatever. But I'd say 95% or better, 99% of my customers are releasing every fish they catch now. And they're not doing it just with me. In the past, I feel like, they were just doing it because they were with me, and they know know where I come from with it and my attitude about it, but I think it's catching hold, man. I think we're actually turning the corner on that stringer shot. It's They're still out there. There's still a bunch of them, but I feel like the general public. I'm talking to young guys too.
Yeah.
You know, when we were in our 20s, hell, that's what we did, man. I mean, we
Mhm.
caught a lot of fish, and we kept all these fish and put them in the freezer. And I'm talking to younger guys now, and they're like, "No, we don't do that." And,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of them that are listeners have come to me and said, "Man, since listening to you, me and my buddies changed our ways. You know, we're not keeping everything we catch anymore." And I'm seeing it fewer and fewer at my ramps over here. I know where Dean is at it's still a big thing. You know, a lot of his guides over there are still really hammering on fish, and a lot of I'm not gonna say that happened here. There's a lot of them, but
Mhm.
it's getting fewer and fewer.
Dean, you about lost your mind. You
Okay.
about lost your mind the other day
Well,
coming in when there's the nail pictures were over there.
of course. I'm going to be the voice of pessimism here then. And every good story is amazing. Every fish that goes back in the water couldn't be happier. But okay, how many oysters did you say are going back in the water?
15 billion oyster and
Okay,
oysters.
15 billion oysters are going back in. 150 trillion have been taken out and no longer exist. It's a drop in the bucket. It's a big number. It sounds great. I can show you reefs right here in Redfish Bay that 25 years ago were alive and thriving with oysters poking up. They are piles of shell now. They're dead. It exists up and down the coast. The water quality issues, until we can change the poison that's running into the bays and multiplying exponentially, it's nice that something's going back in and there is an effort to be done. But on the grand scale of life in the bays, it's a drop in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
We got to do what we can. We really have to try to release fish. We have to get a mentality that protects the resource. We have to, it's going to take, it's going to take generations, a generation to change the mentality of that. And I have said this, Scott and I, and we still fight those battles. We still fight them every day, 100%. For the past 20 years, we have fought tons of battles, from the seagrass protection to catch and release to, being group members of Flatsworthy and other conservation organizations that work very, very hard to do that. But Scott and I we're in the twilight of our careers. We like John. We're the OGs of this,
Yeah.
and it is up to the next generation to decide where they want to go with this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to protect what's there? Yeah, there's a lot of battles still left to fight. But I tend to be pessimistic on all those subjects because I'm watching the propellers completely destroy the seagrass in Redfish Bay. My prediction is in 10 years, there won't be any seagrass on Ransom and Dagger Flats. I can show you pictures from 20 years ago. It was the greenest, luscious, grew to the top and laid over in the summertime. It does not exist anymore. Giant swaths of barren land that it ain't coming back.
Well, let's dig into this a little bit because I do think it's interesting. And ultimately, as Jay pointed out here, as we're recording live on YouTube, the ultimate responsibility, and you both said this, is up to us as fishermen. But I think, and not to pull pull a muscle in my arm, patting ourselves on the back. But I think this podcast has opened a lot of eyes. Scott has alluded to that, and other podcasts and other broadcasters. Ultimately, comes back to the fishermen. But isn't that message, Dean? I'm gonna stay with you on this one because I got something else for Scott. resonating a little more, and isn't it happening a little bit?
It is definitely. There are many more people on my boat that release fish. It is drifting into the culture. Oh, the fact that it's in the conversation at all is a good thing, because it was not even in the conversation not that long ago.
Yeah.
And much love to everybody who puts a fish back, but I still see people disrespecting people who throw fish back. They are offended that someone puts a fish back. There is a counterculture out there that is working. They're exaggerate every fish they kill because they think that's a smack in the face to the people who release fish.
Right.
And it's just it's out there. But Florida, I use this analogy over and over again. Florida is like 20 years ahead in evolution of the fishing evolution than Texas is. They fished their fisheries almost to extinction. That's why they have very strict rules. They have closed seasons, and people have a different perspective on catch and release over there. They understand the value of the fish. They understand what it means to not have fish. And when Texas made this law for the speckled trout that was 100% proactive, I never expected that limit to be so thin and so small. Amazing. Couldn't be more proud of the people that made that decision. That was a very much proactive decision. Everything that Florida did was reactive to where they were in their fishery whenever they got extreme with protecting what was there. And I can't wait for 3 years and see where our trout fishery is, and then see how people react to that result. You know, if they do respect the effort that went in, because every trout that's over 20 inches now goes back in the water. Give that 3 years. There's going to be results from that.
Yeah, Scott,
and then hopefully people respect that and understand that results come from long-term goals.
Yeah, Scott, any thoughts you have on what Dean said, but also that he touched on something I was going to ask you about, and that is, once we start seeing, man, I caught 4 25-inch trout today, you know, let's say in 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is, all of a sudden maybe more people even open their eyes and say, hey, this is a good thing that we're doing right now.
Yeah, I'm already hearing some of it. I'm hearing some guys talking about, man, we are catching some really nice trout. And, you know, we're catching some big trout, and point straight back to that. Yeah, that 24, 25-inch trout that you're catching today was one that may have been released as, you know, a 21 a few months back. So, you know, the opportunity is going to be there to catch a lot more big trout. And even the old crudgy guy that wants to keep a bunch of fillets still likes to catch a 25, 26-inch trout. He may be mad he's got to put it back, but they still get a thrill out of it. As Dean was talking about the generation of change, a lot of what I'm seeing is it's younger people. It's the 20-somethings. It's the teenagers that are much more conservation minded than we ever were. I mean, that we ever thought about being. And I think it's due to, you know, podcasts and listen to the guys that have been there for a long time talk about it. And the other part is when I go to a CCA group, it's not just a bunch of old guys in there anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it was getting kind of to that point there for a while where you go to a CCA banquet and, you know, look around the room and everybody's 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. And now I'm seeing a whole lot more 20s and 30s that are hanging out in there, and they're involved. It's not like they just came just to see what was going on. They're running their chapters and doing good. So I think that generational thing is coming. I'm hoping it's coming faster than what we think it is.
The other thing, Dean, is, you know, let's get back to how we got into this topic, and that is the habitat. You talked about 15 billion oysters is not a big a big chunk in the grand scheme, but it's still a big chunk. And oysters, unlike mangroves, and we'll get to the mangroves, because I was blown away. I mean, it looked healthy, and not like it used to be, but real healthy. But oysters grow pretty fast. If then you got to tie in the oyster seasons and controlling that. You know what I mean? They can grow fast, a lot faster than mangroves.
Well, and more areas are protected from overharvest, and there is look at the shrimping industry if you want to compare that. Shrimping, the shrimp were almost fished to extinction. The shrimpers like to yell and scream for other reasons that those things were limited. But you talk to shrimpers who will be honest, they weren't catching the shrimp that were out there. They bought back the licenses, they closed the seasons, they made some strong efforts. Shrimp came back strong. Oysters can do the same thing if they are treated proper. We still have an army. Well, okay, a navy, a navy of oyster boats that descend in mass on areas that are still open to oystering, until they limit licenses, limit the harvest, and, extreme things like that. Yeah, it can. And I hate to be pessimistic, would love to be more optimistic about it, but it seems it's a tough battle. There's no doubt. There's a lot of efforts that have to be made. And with the mangroves, so it was 21 when the freeze, and that's an act of Mother Nature that happens. And then it rebounds from the act of nature. The oysters are caused by man, the overharvest. Those things have been destroyed by us. They aren't out there harvesting mangroves. They're not clear cutting mangrove trees. We're not out there doing that. So, Mother Nature has her wrath that she inflicts on those things, but it's up to us to kind of quit subjecting our wrath on the oysters, and then hopefully they would survive. 100%. The science on what oysters do for the bay is incredible. Everybody knows that. It's common knowledge. Put oysters back in the bay, your bay is cleaner. It is healthier. They are the filter system of the bays. You can read stories about Copano Bay and St. Charles and Aransas Bay. You could walk from the mainland to St. Joe Island on the reefs. That is how many. The reefs were harvested for shell, for roads. I mean, they were dug out of the bays for chicken feed. They were wholesale destroyed, to make roads. And so until we get something close back to that, we're kind of spinning our wheels. And it's a great feel-good story. I love it. Do not want to disrespect the effort that those people are putting. You got to start somewhere. But compared to what was there, in short, you're talking 100 years ago. In the planetary scale, it's a blink of an eye on what we have done to the oysters in the bay.
Scott, what about limiting out-of-state oystering, oysterers coming to Texas?
That absolutely needs to be done. I mean, there's no reason I should see,
Mississippi. I've seen Mississippi. I've seen Alabama.
Louisiana. All those oyster boats coming over here. And it shouldn't happen. I mean, I'm sorry, that just shouldn't happen. They from other states should not be profiting off of the Texas bays. I mean, that's our water. That's our oysters. They should. I get it. They paid for their license, whatever. But man, that's rough. Somebody mentioned on here, our chef Gonzo there mentioned the oyster farms. I went to a couple meetings and they were doing the oyster farm. They had the guys that like the 6 or 8 oyster farmers that are pioneering this, and it's awesome. And they're sourcing their own oysters and growing their own oysters and harvesting them without dredging up the bottom of the bay. They've got, it's a really cool project, and if you're interested, you can look into it. But they've got structures that they put out in the bay that the oysters attached to, and grow, and then they can harvest them.
Yeah.
It's happening all up and down the coast. I talked to several of those people. They're really cool. They were way off into it. The other part of that is those oysters that they're using there, they're spawning just like other oysters,
Yeah.
and they're contributing more to the original oyster base, all the oysters in our base. So every little bit helps. I mean, like Dean said, people don't realize it. There used to be a road. They used to run wagons across from Redfish Point or April Fool Point to Smith Point in Galveston Bay, where the ship channel is now.
I can't even imagine that.
There was so much oyster out there that on a low tide, they would ride horses across the bay to Smith Point. I mean, think about how many oysters that was. Karankawa, Karankawa, the reason it's Karankawa Reef over in West Bay, that's how the Karankawa Indians got back and forth. That was their causeway. That's how they got back and forth to the island, was walking. And that I cannot understand. How the hell the Indians, how'd they walk across that oysters in moccasins?
Good tough hides. Last thing, Dean, before we get to the next topic, because there's one that's been on the books here for 3 weeks, so we got to get to it next. But you said that you were telling me on the boat that there is a good and better initiative to plant mangroves down in our area.
There's some guys at the oh yeah, you'll be proud of them. It's the Texas A&M Corpus Christi.
There we go.
Your Aggie friends. Yes, they have a huge department that is involved with planting mangroves and rejuvenating a lot of those things. So yeah, I mean, every aspect, there's someone involved in every aspect of conservation out there on the base, whether it's fish, shrimp, oysters, plants, seagrass, birds. There's a lot of effort to conserve and preserve, what was out there. Yes. And so the Texas A&M Corpus Christi has a department dedicated to the mangroves out there. A couple of hippie PhD guys out there running around sticking seeds. Now they actually go out and collect seeds, and then they start them in the lab, and then they go plant them.
Yeah.
I've been doing a simpler thing for that around over here. You know how they all those seeds float up in the fall?
Yeah.
They're all floating along the windy shoreline. When I'm out there scouting, doing things by myself, I go along those shorelines, I grab a whole bunch of seeds, I put them on pockets. And then from the polling platform, as I'm polling around, I see areas that are devoid of, they've big mud flats now that used to be all mangroves. And I'm taking those seeds and tossing them, putting them into those areas. I went back and looked at a couple of places that had done it, and I'll be damned, there's like 2-foot-tall mangroves growing in there.
Yeah.
So,
and those little seeds are just bursting with life. You'll find them floating with a sprout before they even hit land. They have a root on the bottom and a little sprout on top. And I mean, they have a strong will to live.
And you just have to put them in shallow water, right?
I just throw them out on mud flats.
On the flats. Yeah.
Just on the edges, and my original thought was I was going to grab a whole bunch of them, half 5-gallon bucket full or so, and bring them home and plant them, and then go back out and plant them in places. And as I got to thinking about it, I said, they
do this.
Yeah,
they do
on their own.
Yeah.
So maybe if I just give them a shot by throwing them into areas that weren't growing anything, maybe they'll take off. I'll be damned.
Well, explain.
The red mangroves.
Yeah.
Over at the aquatic center, there's a little pond behind the parking lot that gets a little bit of foot traffic. People bank fish over there sometimes, but I stuck 70 seeds of red mangroves, and there's about 15 of them that have survived to this day that are absolutely thriving. But of course, I had other projects that went on for 5 years, and then the freeze, finished all of those off, and they never came back. But yeah, there's about a dozen right now that are just absolutely thriving.
Well, like for our listeners who are like listening to Scott and you and going, I might be able to do that. Explain what they look like. Explain, what they should be doing in terms of, hey, every little bit helps, like we were talking about.
They're about the size of a peach pit, just little green,
like
seeds.
a lima bean,
Yeah.
lima bean looking
That
thing.
looks like an overgrown lima bean, and they float up after the seeds drop. You can see them on the plants right now. They're seeding, and once those seeds drop, they just float to a shoreline. Well, if you look now, all the regrowth is right up against the shorelines. There's nothing behind that like it used to be. So all those seeds that have been floating up the last few years are taking off, but they're growing right on top of each other. So my idea was just grab some of those that are floating there where there's already a bunch of them growing and disperse them a little bit better. Kind of Johnny Appleseeding it,
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. Because what Dean does is commitment. That's commitment.
It's been a lot of setbacks as well as a commitment. But so the black mangroves look like a little lima bean. The red mangroves looks like a green bean, like a long green bean. And so I have friends over in Rockport that have actually found a lot of red mangrove seeds that have been washing up on the shorelines. And these come from Central America. They ride the current, and with all the hurricanes that have been taking place down south, I mean, Mother Nature is the Johnny mangrove seed out there, spreading them around. And so the whole shoreline out in front of the Lydia Ann Channel, all along the lighthouse out in front, right behind the pass, it's just one of those areas where an abundance of red mangrove seeds floated in on the current, land on some favorable soil, and they were thriving all along that shoreline. I mean, I used to post pictures of them. I harvested seeds from those plants, sprouted them. Scott's got one growing on his back porch. It's still alive to this day.
No, it finally dumped on me. I don't know what happened.
Yeah,
it just kind of shriveled up one day.
And I've had those. I have red mangrove trees growing in my flower beds in my yard, where the sprinklers keep them constantly wet. I got them growing in buckets on the back porch. I sprout seeds all the time. And it's crazy. They'll sit there and thrive, but they're designed. It's not a great flower bed plant. They do much better in the wild. I have a lot of them that have done the same thing. They grow for 2 years, and then all of a sudden they just turn yellow, boom, and give it up.
My plan was to take that one out over here in Port O'Connor and plant it out somewhere in a place that I go all the time. And
well, I got some more.
I got it died before I could do it.
Yeah. So before we move on, I was just thinking this was hilarious, Scott. So I saw Dean on I don't know if it was Friday or Saturday, and he's rubbing the inside of his leg, and he's flexing his shoulder, and he's flexing his shoulder, and he goes, "We need to do boat dock safety on the podcast." And I'm like, "Why is that, Dean? Why do we need to do boat dock safety?" And I'm like, I don't know, but we will. And I didn't put it on the rundown because I was just like thinking, okay, actually I did, but I was like, we'll get to that at some point. You did what all of us do occasionally. What happened? You've done it a million times. You walked off that boat.
The old light bulb went off as I was getting up off the floor on this story may help someone from hurting themselves someday. It was a slow, agonizing thought, but it was a thought. So I'm getting at my boat hangs in the marina, it hangs up in the sling. And so I raised up the boat, cleaned it up, and I'm carrying, I'm always carrying rods and reels. I'm carrying tackle bags. I'm carrying crap and stepping out of there. This time I'm getting out of the boat completely hands-free. 1 foot hits the dock. There's a little gap between the boat and the pier. Second foot goes right into the crack between the boat and the dock. And I didn't know until that day how fast a body could hit the floor. And I've had a lot of stumbles. I've had a lot of slips. I mean, I live a very active lifestyle.
Well, we all have. But you dropped like the floor came out.
A trap door, son. It was like a trap. And another thing. So I've kind of analyzed this as I've had time to ponder. So when I stepped in that hole, I really expected something to be under my foot. So
You put all your weight. Yeah.
Exactly. I was putting my weight on that foot, and there was nothing to catch that weight. And so my inner thigh just grazed the boards going down. And if you take a look, if everybody that's listening, if you take a look at your inner thigh, and if you go up your leg, do you know where the stopping point is?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We do. We absolutely do.
Well, that's where the board stopped. And then I still have the abrasion on this one. I don't even know what this one hit.
Yeah.
But it's there. And then
It happened in a flash.
It happened in a
man,
flash.
dude, it was a flash is pretty damn quick. So I hit the floor. I was so happy. I didn't hit my face. I didn't knock my teeth out. I didn't hit my head. So as I'm laying there and this pain is just
And
radiating.
you saw stars,
through
right? You said you kind of went, whoop, one of those things.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
There was a couple of seconds there when I was, who am I? Where am I? Kind of moment. And then as the pain is radiating through my body, and so Carrie was out of town. I was home alone. There was nobody at the boat dock. There was nobody at the boat. I didn't have a friend a phone at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm laying there, and as I'm analyzing, I'm taking inventory on everything. The only thing that was going through my mind was, how bad is this? I was like, because I knew it was bad. I was like, okay, how bad is this situation? And I rolled over. I lost my shoe. My shoe went in the water. It floated out in the harbor. And so I rolled over, and I was like, okay. And my leg is where it really hurt. So I started moving my leg, and I was like, oh, it's not broken. I was like, okay, my leg's not broke. And then I reached down just above my leg, and I was like,
you make sure everything's all right there.
I was like, those ain't broke. They're
both there. They're both
They
there.
obviously didn't fall off because they hurt.
I was like, those are where they're supposed to be. And then I started moving my arm, and I it may have been the other way. That may have been my first inventory. I was like, okay, those are okay. And then my leg, and then my arm, and then I realized that I didn't break a bone. Nothing was that hurt, except for my pride, pretty bad.
Yeah, but you weren't embarrassed.
And the next day, my neck, it was like whiplash or something. The next day, I was like, man, why does my neck and my shoulder hurt so bad? I was like, oh, that's right. You kissed the pier yesterday.
And Scott,
but okay, so here's it. But look, all of that leads up to all of the other accidents that I've seen take place at the boat ramp. I saw a dude, an older gentleman one day, who was sitting on the bow of his boat. He was sitting with his butt and his legs over the front, and he went to scoot off of the front of the boat and to just jump down to the ground. The cement bulkhead was there in front of him.
Oh no.
His hands are on the boat. So when he went to push forward, his feet went under before his butt came off the boat. So he went face first, hands behind him, bam, head onto the cement. Saw it, pulled over, helped the dude stand up. Horrible accident. People walking on the tongue of the trailer in between the boat and the truck. Boom, slip. There ain't nothing childproof in that area. There is nothing that is not sharp and hard that won't hurt you. But yeah, public service announcement. Anytime you're around wet, slippery surfaces on the front of the boat, getting into the boat, out of the boat, boat dock, boat pier, boat trailer, truck. Am I forgetting anything?
But
they will all hurt you when you hit the floor.
It's funny because you're all right, but it's not funny, man. And Scott, when I jot down, I said, all right, he wants to talk about boat dock safety. We're going to talk about boat dock safety. My first thought was, Scott, is like, always be careful. Kind of what he did, especially by yourself, because like that could have ended ugly. I mean, he could have died out there if he landed in the water.
There was a guy here that got life flighted. Hell, he was stepping out of his boat that was on the trailer at the house and caught his toe on the gunnel as he was stepping out. And once your momentum's already going out of the boat. Well, he caught his toe up there. Well, his feet are now 3.5 feet up, and his body went down first. He hit face first, chest first onto the ground, and they ended up life flighting him. He was in pretty bad shape. He tore some stuff up. But yeah, I mean, things can happen.
Check out, y'all see Parkoff. Y'all see Parkoff's
get life alerts for the host.
We need that little necklace.
I've fallen through the dock and I can't get up. Oh, good thing we can laugh about it. But no, it's
that dude that fell off.
Somebody's asking about is bare feet better traction? Not really. I mean, the worst, the absolute worst is what Dean used to wear all the time is the Crocs. Those Crocs, those are the slipperiest son of bitches on a little bit of fish slime on a boat, and you can really mess up quick on them. Now I wear really good. I've got the Sims tennis shoes, deck shoes, and they're solid. And I wear the Olakais quite a bit, and they grip really good. The best thing you can have is true deck shoes. Some kind of a tennis shoe, deck shoe that grips.
Has those it has that little pattern on the bottom, real tiny. It has a good grip on it. Yeah.
Can you recommend shoes that grip air between the boat and the dock?
I mean, there has to be a surface for them to traction to. That's a big part of traction. I don't know if you know this, but if you jack a car up and then you turn the engine on and you hit the gas, it don't go nowhere.
There has to be a track to get traction.
Exactly. Oh man! All right, got to get to this one. I think this has been on the rundown for about 3 weeks now, if not longer. So we'll get to this before we get to what Scott do and what would Dean do. And it's one of those that we really very, very rarely, if ever, address. So this is a listener said, I've caught a lot of fish along the edges of the intercoastal here on the upper coast. But to be honest, it's just been a lot of luck, lots of blind casting. You guys talk a lot about what to look for in bays and on the beachfront, etc. But I wonder if you could help me out along the deep ditch is what he called it. And that's what I call it. So I like that. Is there, I mean, what are, other than the most obvious one, Scott, like what you're looking for when you're going down? Redfish can be abundant, as you well know, along the edges of those deep channels, especially more on the upper coast, it seems like to me. But what do you actually look for when you're on the intercoastal?
Along here, we've got grass flats, just like in the bay. We got sandy shelf with some grass on it. They can be up on there. The main thing I always look for, we fished a lot of it during tournaments, redfish tournaments. There's some big reds that hang out in the intercoastal, and we look for the riprap, the concrete riprap, any pipes like on the one side of the bay side of the intercoastal. They'll have those big, huge berms. Those things are hollow in the middle of them, and that's just where they pump the dredge. And then they've got pipes that lead out of that. So when it rains, a lot of water comes out of those pipes and flows into the intercoastal at times, and it creates a big washout. And those little washouts will hold a lot of fish. The main thing I always look for was just any kind of structure along the edge of it. And the riprap was the best. And what it does, it causes, kind of like on the beach, there'll be a little gut right up against the riprap, and we'd throw right onto it. Popping cork and a gulp. Throw that right up along there, because a lot of times it's kind of dirty from all the barges going by.
Yeah.
But if it's clear, we'd throw spinner baits, soft plastics, top waters, whatever. But the go-to was generally, popping cork and a gulp, because your water's usually a little off color in there. It's not quite as nice. But those reds will get right up against that riprap and just run right up along the side of it. I still do it from time to time now on windy days. We've got that huge levee that runs all the way from one end, from San Antonio Bay to Port O'Connor. And that whole side on that over there has got salt grass going right down to the water. It's got mud flats, little sand, and it's got some grass beds growing in a lot of places. And so it's just like a mini flat, along the edge of the bay. And there's always some good water movement in there. There's a lot of bait moves along. There's some days when it's super windy and somebody wants to fly fish and they don't want to reschedule. Well, I'll pull the whole damn side of the intercoastal all the way down.
Dean, one thing of time, depending on the time of year, especially as we get into November, December, January gets a little colder, kind of what Scott was talking about. What I used to look for in Sabine, because they had big walls of rock, riprap, whatever you want to call it, metal, along some of these channels, that heats up first when the sun comes up. And generally speaking, I don't know about you, I had a lot of success on that stuff that starts to heat up first on the colder months.
And yeah, I mean, all along the intercoastal is one of those kind of overlooked opportunities. I talk about the drop-offs on the edge of the flats, like outside Ransom, Dagger, the super flats, all the big flats, on low tide. Fish just stack up along the edges. The exact same thing happens along the intercoastal. We talk about the drains where water drains out of the flats. And Scott knows this about me. I made a living for many years kayak fishing along the edge of the Aransas Channel. I can't tell you on that DOA gold, I called that thing the golden shrimp. That little shrimp, the clear with the gold flake. There wasn't the kind of boat traffic that we battle now, but on weekdays you can still do it. Those drains, those little breaks in the sandbar along the entire length of the Aransas Channel. I mean, and in the wintertime, January, February, when nobody's out there, I would tell people it's going to be kind of a short trip today. Paddle across the channel, 2 minutes, and we would sit there and just every single cast was speckled trout all day long.
Yeah, you call them green holes.
The intercoastal has the exact same opportunity. Yeah,
it is overlooked. It is absolutely overlooked.
It is very much an overlooked opportunity. And so even down here on both sides of the intercoastal, there's grass beds adjacent on both sides, on the shoreline side. And if you go more towards Rockport, I mean, there's several miles of grass flats on the bulkhead side.
No, and even
then
now,
there's little cuts, little channels, there's other little flats that are just loaded with fish. And I mean, it's one of those things that doesn't seem to come up in conversation a lot, but it is, if you spend time along there, you can definitely catch a lot of fish. For me, it tends to be way more speckled trout than reds, but also
depends on where you are, what's going on, that type of thing. But
you fish the drop off in those drains, you're going to catch more speckled trout. But if you go up there right against that concrete and get in that little gut, those redfish are running that gut, and everybody just drives right by them. And
the same concept.
The upper coast, we did the same thing. We did it on Bolivar. I mean, that is ship traffic constantly. And the only thing you got to watch out for is the barges. They're going to suck that water out from under you, and then they're going to send a little wave your way. So you got to kind of be aware of what's going on, how fast a barge is pushing. The faster, deeper barges are going to do a lot more damage. But with boat traffic, I mean, people running by you left and right, throwing wakes up there, barges coming by, wakes going off, and we're up there just catching the hell out of big reds.
Yeah, and the same concept on the intercoastal or the channels. You're going to catch the trout. You throw out to 4 or 6 feet of water on the outside, but you backtrack to where that drain is up in the flats or where it dead ends into the grass bed, and there's going to be redfish laying up in there. And that is, if you're fishing for flounder in Redfish Bay, we don't have an abundance of flounder here the way the northern part of Texas does, the flounder factory that exists up here. But that is where flounder live in Redfish Bay. They live in those drains, they live on the edge of those drop-offs, and that is, if you're specifically going for a flounder, that's where they're found around here.
Man, good stuff. Terrific show today. And
Look,
I'm glad we hit.
Scott's taking a selfie of himself.
Really,
He's like, damn. He's like, I look good when I'm on the podcast.
No, Let's take a picture of my deer on the wall. One of the guys I had on today is big into deer hunting.
Yeah.
We were talking about my 10.5-inch wide buck that I shot last year.
So
Oh,
you're selling hunting trips while you're podcasting. It's
Man,
what's that? Multitasking.
He's like,
Multitask.
man, I ain't never seen a good looking, trophy deer that was only 10.5 inches wide. I said, well, I got one.
Well, he has now. He will now.
178.
Yeah. All right.
Man.
What would Dean do? I'm gonna start with you. I haven't started with you in a while, Dean, but it's gonna be a little windy all of a sudden. It looks like Thursday, Friday, definitely Saturday.
Yeah. But it's that north wind we've been waiting on for 10 months. It seems like it's that north wind we've been waiting on for 18 months.
Exactly.
Now, nice cold front, gonna be like 60, 50 something degrees, but it's a short setback, which promises beautiful things afterwards. But yes, for the short term, cold front, I think Wednesday afternoon is like 20 to 30 mile an hour gust. Thursday is going to be a little challenging.
I got 28 gusting to 34.
Yeah,
and colder. Yeah.
And then you go out there in the wide open water, it's going to be 35 to 40.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's going to feel like 50 to 60. It's that feel like wind. It's like it's the wind index.
Yeah. So after it settles down, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh man, after it settles down, it's gonna be like a little slice of heaven out there.
It ain't settling down for a while. Apparently, we got a pair of them coming. I hadn't really looked that far ahead, but yeah, like I said, 28 gusting to 34 Wednesday morning. Thursday is 20s. Upper teens and 20s. Friday's upper teens and 20s. Friday night it goes back to 25 to 30. All day Saturday, 23 gusting to 25, 27. Sunday, 22 gusting to 26, 27.
Yeah.
I mean, it's straight east. This is a weird front. The front is the big dip of the front is actually going to the southeast over Georgia and North Carolina, all that area. And so they're calling it a backdoor front. We're going to get the front from the east and northeast as it spills out and expands. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I got guys that wanted to go tarpon fishing on Friday.
Hey, good luck.
I don't think we're going to be doing that on Friday.
Hey, but on the bright side, Monday and Tuesday look amazing.
Well,
yeah, for our weekday challenge, folks. Once we get past this thing, it don't look too bad Monday through Thursday as far out as I can see.
Yeah.
10 to 12 miles an hour and all looking pretty good. But I think this might be a weekend.
Hey,
I'm in a chili cook-off. It's a good week. Good week
for me. You nailed it, son.
Sometimes timing is everything. I got that chili cook-off that I'm in.
That chili tastes even better on a weekend.
It's nice and cold.
You can throw down some horrible.
Nice and cold.
Well, cool.
I hate to tell you this, but it ain't gonna be chilly cold.
Well, it's gonna be cold compared to where we were yesterday at 100 degrees.
It ain't gonna be chilly.
Yeah. So sometimes my timing does work out.
This may be that time that you get those honeydews done.
Yeah.
I'm showing a low Thursday morning, 60 degrees. That ain't bad.
Yeah.
By the weekend, it's back to lows in the 70s, highs in the 80s.
You know what that is? That is bad news for the first deer of the season for me is what
There we go. See, everybody's got plans, alternate plans.
That is bad news for old Bucky that's been out there living a little
mocking
too free and easy.
All on your camera, on your game camera, they're just laughing at you.
I hate to tell you, Bucky.
I see some tractor time in my future. This weather gonna be nice. I'll just get on a tractor. I got to knock some of these. My grass grew like hell this year with all the scattered rains.
Man, forget that, dude. It's time to kill something.
I can't see my deer. The grass is too high.
It's time to
put the corn in the yard.
All right, boys. That was good. We went a little bit long today, but that was a fun show for sure.
Didn't even get into what I did today. I mean,
I know
schools of redfish, eating shrimp. Everything
was looking good.
Cool. Oh man, it was awesome. We had probably 6, 7 big schools today, and they're chasing shrimp down the shorelines, and one of them cutting out across an open lake, just a big old wad of 30, 40, 50 fish.
Man.
It was all.
See,
That's
they
why
knew.
that's why I was coming in late.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because you didn't want to leave the fish.
I'm gonna go ahead on and shout out to Caleb. They knew the barometer was changing.
There we go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, post those
Pretty damn
pictures.
high.
Post those pictures, Scott. I want to see them, or send them to me. But anyway, yeah, a lot of fun. Good day on the podcast. Good day on the water for Scott. You guys appreciate you, and don't forget to hit us up with those questions. It's always good. We get good stuff like that. Intercoastal question right there. Get well soon. Thoughts and prayers, Dean, on your thigh and everything that entails above your thigh. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Catch them up, and we will talk to you next time.
I could still tear that ass up.
I was